I knew something was wrong the second the mountain groaned under my boots, low deep, like something ancient twisting awake. And a few hours later, an entire row of brand-new HOA townhomes slid down my family's hillside like plastic toys on wet glass. $10 million of damage in minutes. And somehow these people, these lunatics, blamed me. They looked at me like I personally dragged the mountain down with my bare hands. I'm not a builder. I don't own a construction company. I don't have an army of trucks or surveyors or contractors. I have a 40-acre hillside I inherited from my dad, a battered cabin, 2 boots, and 40 years of geological warnings scribbled in his notebooks. But according to Highland Ridge HOA, I orchestrated a landslide. Sure, because that's exactly what I do for fun on a Thursday. Maybe I should start from the beginning, back before the ground cracked, before the screaming, before the news vans showed up and Karen Maddox got hauled off in handcuffs, back when all I wanted was to be left alone. I've lived on that mountainside my whole life. Cedar Valley isn't anything special, just pines, old truck engines, and neighbors who pretend they don't see you at the grocery store, but the land my father left me, the south face of Ridgecrest Mountain, that place was sacred to him. It had veins of underground water that shifted like sleeping animals, layers of fragile clay, and a history of snapping loose whenever someone poked it too hard. Dad used to say, "This mountain's alive, son. Treat it like you'd treat an old bull. Respect it. Don't prod it." He'd learned the hard way. Half his logging road got swallowed in the big slide of '74. So when he died and the land became mine, I didn't touch it, didn't carve it up, didn't pour concrete anywhere. I just kept the fence repaired, cleared brush so wildfires wouldn't eat my cabin, and walked the fault lines every morning with my coffee the way he did. The mountain rested, and so did I. Until Highland Ridge HOA showed up. The first time I heard about them was a flyer taped to my mailbox, "New luxury townhomes coming soon." Nothing weird except the watercolor map showed their new development sitting right on my south slope. My land. I laughed out loud, honest to God. Figured some graphic designer misread a boundary line. Happens all the time. But curiosity got me. So I walked down to the shiny new HOA gatehouse, a massive stone sign lit up like a casino entrance. And that's where I met her. Karen Maddox. The kind of woman who treats a clipboard like a weapon. Blonde bob that doesn't move sunglasses big enough to deflect bullets. Her voice came out sharp and annoyed. "Sir, you can't park your truck there. This is HOA-controlled property." I looked behind me at the dirt road I'd driven on since childhood. "Ma'am, this is my driveway." She blinked like I'd spoken some alien dialect. "Impossible. Our expansion survey shows this as Highland Ridge property." So I pulled out my deed. She took it between 2 fingers like it was contaminated. "We'll have our legal team review this." Her legal team turned out to be a retired divorce attorney named Bert, who probably hadn't read a land map in his entire career. But the damage was done. Within a week, metal stakes started popping up on my hillside, bright orange tape flapping like victory flags. Surveyors trespassed on my land. Construction trucks arrived. Bulldozers scraped away topsoil my dad spent decades protecting. When I confronted the foreman, a guy named Chad with wraparound sunglasses and the IQ of a folding chair, he smirked at me and said, "Not according to the HOA." That was the day I realized I wasn't dealing with a mistake. I was dealing with arrogance. I sent emails, dozens, attached survey maps, copies of my dad's notes, photos of the old landslide from '74. I even hand-delivered a packet to the HOA office. Karen took it like it was a used tissue and said, "We'll review this." Their review must have lasted 3 seconds because 2 days later they dug foundation trenches into the unstable slope. They poured concrete. They installed retaining walls wrong. They piled heavy machinery on soil that was never meant to carry weight. I warned them again and again. The HOA replied with one word, unsubstantiated. Then they put up a 10-foot metal fence on my land. That one hit different. Seeing that fence hammered into the earth my dad taught me to care for, I wanted to scream. Instead, I rattled the lock until my arm went numb. Then I got a text from an unknown number: "Tampering with HOA property will result in legal consequences." Right. HOA property. On my land. But the real turning point came when a contractor, The only one with a functioning conscience complained that the retaining wall should have been built with reinforced concrete, that it was unsafe to skip steel gridwork. Chad told him HOA said cut costs, pour it as is. That night I emailed the county. Again and again. Finally, they sent an inspector. He took one look at the slope, scanned the soil with his equipment, and said quietly, "This hill is unstable. They need to stop immediately." Bless that man. But Karen didn't care. When he handed Highland Ridge a stop work order, she marched down the hill like a furious peacock and said, "You can't do that." He shrugged. "I already have. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought the mountain would finally get to rest again." But the HOA didn't stop. At 2 in the morning, I saw headlights on the slope, pickup trucks, no plates. 4 men hauling lumber tools and rebar, reinforcing the wall illegally, violating the order, covering up the evidence of their own stupidity. So I set up cameras, 3 of them. Angles from the ridge trees, old fence posts. Everything recorded. I wasn't going to let them twist the truth. And yet, the next morning I woke up to an email from Karen accusing me of tampering with their retaining wall. Me, the guy who'd been begging them to stop for months. I felt something inside me crack. I'm not a man who cries easily, but that morning, I sat on my porch, staring at that email, and for the first time since this whole mess started, I wondered if maybe I was the problem. Maybe I should have stayed quiet. Maybe I should have walked away. Maybe I should have sold the land years ago and spared myself the fight. Maybe I was the one poking the old bull after all. But then, just as I was sinking into that hole of doubt, the ground shifted under my feet. A deep, familiar tremor. The same warning my dad taught me to recognize. The same sound he'd described in his notes. The mountain speaks before it moves. And that reminder that my father spent decades documenting this land, understanding it, protecting it, snapped me back together. I wasn't crazy. They were. The storm rolled in hard, that night wind cutting sideways rain, smashing the hillside, sheets of water running down the slope like rivers. I hiked up the ridge with a flashlight and felt the ground sag beneath my boots. A long, wide crack ran right under the foundation of the new townhomes. I called the HOA emergency line. No answer. I called Karen, straight to voicemail. I knew what was coming. Nothing could stop it now. The mountain had warned them. They didn't listen. The next morning the storm eased, but the soil was soaked through. The mountain felt swollen heavy ready, and the second construction crews arrived ignoring the stop work order, laughing, sloshing through the mud like idiots. The ground let out a long, hollow sound like breath escaping. Then everything happened at once. The retaining wall bulged outward. Cracks split across the slab. Workers shouted, scrambling. Water rushed through the opening, and then like some giant hand yanked the ground forward, the first foundation lurched loose. The townhome slid. 6 feet, 10, 20. Wood snapped. Screws screamed loose. Concrete screamed. People ran. I filmed everything. Every second. The mountain wasn't falling fast. It was falling with purpose, pulling down everything the HOA had built like a dog shaking water off its coat. A forklift driver barely escaped before his machine tipped sideways and half disappeared into a sinkhole. Another worker got dragged to safety by Deputy Harper, who'd shown up just in time. And Karen. She chose the worst moment in human history to arrive. Her fancy white jacket soaked instantly. Mascara running. She looked at the destroyed construction site, the ruined retaining wall, the collapsing foundation, and she pointed at me. "This is your doing." I laughed. I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. "Lady," I said, "I don't control the mountain." She shrieked for her lawyer, for the police, for the news crews. She accused me of sabotage, manipulation, threats, witchcraft hell. If she'd yelled that I summoned the rain, I wouldn't have been surprised. And then the mountain groaned again, louder. Another section of the slope slid down, ripping through concrete, flipping a slab like a playing card. Karen froze like a deer in headlights. I actually grabbed her and yanked her to safety before the ground beneath her feet gave way. You'd think she'd thank me. Nope. She pointed at me again and screamed, "He tried to kill me." By the time the news vans pulled in, the slide had caused more than $10 million of damage. Firefighters roped off the area. Search and rescue teams scanned the hillside. Reporters swarmed us. Karen ran straight to them. "He sabotaged our retaining wall. He tampered with the soil. He caused this collapse. Every camera turned to me, and I just smiled, because Sheriff Harper stepped between us with the calmest voice I've ever heard and said, "There is zero evidence of sabotage. In fact, the county found footage of your workers violating a stop work order last night." Karen blinked like someone unplugged her brain. "What footage?" I raised my phone. "Mine." The room might as well have exploded. Reporters started shouting questions. HOA board members panicked. Chad tried to run away, and Karen, angry, cornered, desperate, lunged at me. She actually lunged. 6 cameras caught it. Harper restrained her. Deputies handcuffed her while she shrieked. Mascara streaked across her face like black claws. "This isn't over," she screamed as they shoved her into the patrol car. And I looked her dead in the eye and said, "For your sake, I hope it is." The county suspended the entire Highland Ridge HOA that afternoon. Fraud investigation, permit violations, forged surveys, negligence resulting in catastrophic property damage. Then they called me in. Turns out the county had uncovered old records papers my father filed decades earlier, designating the entire south face of the mountain as a protected geological zone. Legally untouchable, legally unbuildable, legally mine, meaning the HOA never had the right to lay a single brick there. Not one. They hadn't just broken rules. They'd tried to steal my land, and the mountain had answered for me. Karen might still fight in court. The board might try to wiggle out of charges. But none of that changes the truth. Nature doesn't negotiate. It only warns. And if you ignore the warning, it answers.